And of course, in just a moment, we are going to hear now from someone that you chatted to who's got a pretty amazing story. So who is that, Rachel?
Well, Kayum Roy is a worship leader and a musician based in Newcastle upon Tyne. And 13 years ago, Maria, he experienced an introduction to God after a life of adamant atheism. So he told me all about his story.
I grew up a fairly staunch and almost militant atheist. I was relatively aggressive in my viewpoint. And so this is, I guess my kind of early 20s. I just finished university. And I had actually started dating a girl who was a Christian. And this was my first ever contact with Christianity. I'd never been to church, knew nothing about the Bible or any of that stuff. And really, I spent the next 2 years trying to deconvert her. I remember there were times we would have these long discussions that would go on till the kind of early hours of the morning. And she'd be in tears because I'd be so aggressively anti-Christian and anti what I thought it stood for and anti the church. And so I was dead set against it. And then basically, over the course of about 2 weeks, everything changed. And over the course of 2 weeks, all I can describe it as is all of my barriers to faith, all of my anger and frustration at it. It's like those barriers just got, day by day over those 2 weeks, just got slowly demolished. I started feeling some things that I had never felt before. I would describe it as it was like I started getting followed by someone. It was like there was some kind of presence of something. At the time, I had no idea what it was, but it was extremely comforting. And I felt this sense of love just following me around. And as it did, one objection just started toppling after the other. And I started feeling some really, strange things, like I was working up in Newcastle at the time, and I was sat at my desk, and I felt this overwhelming urge, like a real pull on my stomach, to just get up and leave and just go home. And myself and my girlfriend at the time, we had exchanged books. I gave her the Theory of Evolution, and she gave me the New Testament. And I hadn't touched it in 2 years. But I felt this overwhelming urge to get up, go home, and just start reading it. And so I did. That preceded probably the most profound weekend of my life, actually. I remember, this is a classic. I walked past a church on my way home, and I remember looking up at the spire and just feeling, I just felt like my family was inside that building. And I can't tell you how alien that was to feel. And because I'd never been in a church before, at that moment, all I knew what to do was I went and sat down on the bench outside the church, and I'd seen on telly that footballers sometimes do the cross on their chest. So I sat down on the bench and I just did the cross, and I stood up and walked away because I didn't know how to express what was happening in those 2 weeks. And there was a moment at the end of those 2 weeks where I had finished reading, I think, a book called Letters from a Skeptic. And I finished reading it, and all I can describe is it says, I looked up at the ceiling of the room, and it was like there was a presence of love that was so strong that I felt really quite overwhelmed. And I just stood staring. I didn't know what I was looking at, but I stood just staring at the ceiling. And I was like, this thing that has been following me around for the last 2 weeks, it's that presence is here. And it really felt like a fatherly presence is the only way I could describe it. It was like a father had been following me around, and now he was here. And I just got on my knees and just prayed to Jesus and just gave my life to him at the end of those 2 weeks. And then there was an interesting thing that happened, which was that after that, I texted my mom. We had a quite a difficult relationship because of how things growing up. But I said, I know we don't normally get in touch, but I just wanted to say, I feel like I'm going on quite a spiritual journey at the moment. And she texted back and said, "Is it about Jesus?" And I was like, "What? Yes, it is. How did you know?" Because, if I was against kind of organized religion, my mom was, even that's where I got it from. And anyway, she texted back saying that during that kind of same period, that month especially, she'd just been feeling really called to the Lord, just really deeply moved by Jesus, and almost like coming to him down the wedding aisle for her. That was how she felt. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, Mum, you won't believe what's been happening up here over the last couple of weeks." And it turns out that basically the Lord didn't just kind of like get me, he kind of synchronized it, got my mom at the same time. And actually what happened there, this is now, I think 10 years ago, what was a really quite broken relationship. One of the most really sweetest things that's happened is the way he healed that broken relationship. And so, that was 10 years ago. Funnily enough, that relationship with the girl at the time didn't work out, but it was quite a life-changing time there.
Wow, amazing story there. Rachel Matthews chatting with Kayum Roy, who's ended up going from atheism to a worship leader. We're going to hear some of his music actually in just a moment to hear about the fruit of that journey. Rachel, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? When we hear these stories, it's a good reminder, isn't it, how big God is? Because I guess sometimes we've been Christian for a long time, we can forget, can't we?
To tell you what I always feel when I hear these stories, I think, oh Lord, I wish I had that passion back. Or I wish I had that passion again that new believers do. Because when somebody comes to believe in Jesus for the first time, their life, as Kayum was saying, is so transformed. And there's like an energy and there's a belief that I think I don't remember not knowing God. So I've been blessed in a totally different way. But there is something that comes through in these stories of people just being on fire for God. It really encourages me, which is why I really enjoyed listening to that. I've heard it about 4 times. I can keep listening.
Well, amazing. The power of God there in the midst of testimony here on Premier Christian Radio. I'm Maria Rodriguez, and we are just spending some time hearing how God can change lives. And I'm joined by our regional correspondent, Rachel Matthews, who's just been sharing with us a conversation she had recently with a gentleman who was an atheist and now is a worship leader. So we heard there about the journey he was going on, reading a New Testament, and at the same time, God was working in the life of his mother. Well, we're going to hear some of his music and his journey with worship in just a moment here on Premier Christian Radio. Issues for us to think about and pray about. At the moment, though, we've been hearing an amazing story that our regional correspondent Rachel Matthews has been sharing with us of a gentleman she chatted to who had gone from being an atheist to a worship leader. So, Rachel, just tell us a little bit about where Kayum Roy is at now.
Well, so Kayum Roy is in Newcastle upon Tyne. He's a worship leader and a musician. As I said earlier, he became a Christian 13 years ago after that life of adamant atheism. He's really angry then. But since then, he's had a yearning to share his love and experience of God through music. And he shared some of that heart with me in a little bit of one of his tracks from his debut EP.
I've always loved music, and I've always felt the sense of that it has the ability to kind of take you to another place. You go off somewhere, you play a song, or you listen to some powerful music, and you have that lovely experience of going somewhere else. Except there's this person there, and all that sense of compassion and love and understanding is really what I started feeling as I was doing music with the Lord, as opposed to before. So that was really powerful. And it became a place that I wanted to keep going back to. So I get, as I was writing these songs, they all started out as very simple, just singer-songwriter, little guitar, little verse and chorus and stuff. But then as I kept exploring them, I felt this real yearning to try and explore this place where I felt the Lord, where it felt like I could go to a place and be near to him. And so actually over the course of about 5 years, the songs slowly shifted and changed quite dramatically. They were no longer these just simple guitar pieces. I started wanting to explore kind of soundscapes and vistas and textures, and how can I try and describe some of these feelings that I'm having.
For your word is a love that will never fail, and you're my only hope, so I will sing hallelujah, hallelujah.
So I think that's probably quite a big desire that I've got for people listening to the music, is that they can feel like they're being shown a glimpse of something, and I can't even articulate what that is exactly, but a glimpse of something. A lot of the songs came out of really quite a difficult time, and a lot of them start with a sense of actually a pressure and a build-up. And a crying out. That's very often the launching pad that I've had. And then so Let There Be Light is really about, okay, I'm in this pressure and I feel it on all sides, and then just crying out and just looking for that breakthrough of light, that breakthrough of response from the Lord that changes everything. You cry out to him, and then you start to feel his response, and then the whole thing shifts. And in that particular song, it almost has these two sections. The first section being the turmoil, the prayer in that pressure. And then the second section, the almost release, the slow release of this light coming into the situation. And then it just changes. And what was a prayer in the mud, in the pressure, becomes a praise, and you lifting up your hands and just shouting hallelujah. So my aim for Let There Be Light was to try and capture that little journey in a song.
Well, that was Kayum Roy talking about his journey of going from an atheist to worship leader. If you want to find out more about his song, it's called Let There Be Light from Kayum, Kayum. Kayum Roy is his surname. And you can also visit his YouTube channel to find out more.